Don't skip. Some of us genuinely love to talk. We believe our words carry weight, that what we have to say matters, and the world should hear it. But in the chaos of conversation, are we truly listening, or simply waiting for our chance to jump in? The Stoics knew well that words aren't always the most effective tools for communication. Talking a lot doesn't necessarily mean we're communicating well. While we focus on expressing ourselves, the most meaningful moments often exist in the silence where we listen, observe, and truly understand. Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." That wasn't just nature being quirky, it was a powerful insight into how we're meant to interact with the world. In any relationship, communication is key, but it's not just about speaking. Sometimes the right silence can speak louder than 1,000 words. It allows us to think clearly, keep our emotions in check, and make the words we do choose to say matter more. In this video, you'll uncover 7 reasons why speaking less can actually help you win more, alongside simple ways to deepen your listening and make your everyday conversations count. Let's dive into the art of silence, a skill that the strongest people among us have quietly mastered. Number 1, being quiet helps. Being quiet helps you steer clear of mistakes and hold on to your honor. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane." It might sound simple, but that quote carries a central Stoic idea. Wisdom doesn't need a flood of words. In a world filled with constant noise, where everyone is fighting to be heard, it's those who can hold their tongues who actually control the board. They're not swept up in reckless chatter, they don't get caught in careless promises, and above all, they guard their dignity. Have you ever watched someone talk themselves into trouble? A single word spoken in the heat of emotion can become a lifelong burden. A promise made too quickly can shatter trust. A secret shared too soon might cost you a priceless opportunity. Uncontrolled speech can carry consequences beyond measure. The greatest among us have one thing in common: they act more than they talk. Jeff Bezos, Amazon's founder, is a great example. Back when Amazon was just an online bookstore, he didn't rush to broadcast grand ambitions. He didn't make bold claims about reshaping e-commerce or building an everything store. Instead, he stayed quiet and built. His moves weren't loud, but they were deliberate. He refined the logistics behind the scenes, ensuring faster shipping than any competitor. He poured resources into AI, subtly improving the customer experience, helping people find what they needed without wading through endless options. He expanded the delivery infrastructure, shortened fulfillment times, and slowly positioned Amazon as a market giant. No shouting, no bragging, just results doing all the talking. Now ask yourself, how often have you rushed to announce your plans, only to realize you weren't ready? How many times have you spoken about things that weren't certain, only to end up cornered by your own words? Sometimes silence is the armor that shields us from the very mistakes we create through speaking too soon. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things." Those who can stay silent when it counts might be seen as cold, mysterious, or even underestimated. But that's exactly the point. When you don't say too much, you don't show your hand. You don't give people the chance to predict your next move. You gain time to think, to observe, and to act with intention. For those with faith, silence goes even deeper. In the Bible, Jesus didn't always respond to those who challenged him. When people tried to trap him with questions, he often remained quiet, letting their arrogance expose itself. When the Pharisees brought him a woman caught in adultery, he didn't answer right away. He knelt and wrote in the dirt, giving them space to reflect. Then only when the time was right he spoke. "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her." Just one line, but powerful enough to make every accuser walk away. So what's the lesson here? Silence isn't weakness. In fact, it shows total control. When you choose silence, you don't react out of ego. You buy yourself time to respond with wisdom. You allow your actions to speak far louder than any empty promise. But beyond preventing mistakes, there's something even greater. Silence helps you protect your honor. People who speak too much often stumble, but those who speak sparingly, they're often respected. Holding back words at the right moment can preserve your dignity. It can make others pause and reconsider your worth. So ask yourself, can you stay silent when provoked? Do you have the strength to hold back when someone questions you? Are you confident enough not to explain when everyone else is talking? Do you have the courage to listen instead? Remember, winners don't need to announce their success. They let the results speak for themselves. And once you've mastered your words, the next step is mastering your emotions. So how exactly can silence become a weapon to keep you from being swept up in negative feelings? Let's dig into that next. Number 2. Silence helps you control your emotions. Silence is a powerful way to manage your emotions. It can feel uncomfortable, but sometimes staying silent is the smartest move you can make. There are moments when speaking up seems like the natural thing to do, but holding your tongue may actually lead to a better outcome. Psychological research shows that choosing silence in certain situations can protect your relationships, your emotional well-being, and even your reputation. This isn't about avoiding confrontation or bottling things up. It's about recognizing when words will heal and when they'll only create more damage. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Real strength doesn't come from trying to control everything around you. It comes from being in control of how you respond to what happens. When someone insults you, hurts you, or tries to provoke a reaction, your first instinct might be to snap back, immediately and emotionally. But if you pause, hold back your anger, and choose silence instead, you become the one in control of the moment. Stoic philosophy teaches that impulsiveness is the enemy of reason. What we say in anger usually isn't what we actually mean. Words spoken in the heat of the moment are like sharp blades. Once they cut, no amount of apology or regret can undo the wound. One angry outburst can damage a relationship, hurt someone you care about, or push you into a situation you'll wish you could take back for the rest of your life. Seneca, one of the most respected Stoic philosophers, offered this simple but powerful advice. When you're angry, count to 10 before speaking. It might sound basic, but in those 10 seconds you create a space, a buffer between your emotions and your response. That space is where your power lies. It's where reason can speak louder than emotion. History also reminds us how silence in anger can be wise. Abraham Lincoln, one of America's greatest presidents, had a unique habit. Whenever he was upset with someone, be it a subordinate or a political rival, he would write a letter expressing every thought. His anger, his criticism, his disappointment. But he wouldn't send it right away. He would set it aside, sleep on it, and revisit it the next day. Often, by the time morning came, he'd realize the letter didn't need to be sent at all, or he would rewrite it in a calmer tone, one that preserved relationships instead of breaking them. Lincoln avoided unnecessary political blunders and earned respect through patience. And the lesson is clear. Not every thought needs to be voiced. Not every emotion needs to be expressed on impulse. Because once something is said, you can't unsay it. A message sent in anger is permanent. A cruel word, no matter how much you regret it, can live on in someone else's mind forever. Choosing silence isn't weakness. It's a sign of emotional discipline and personal strength. People who lack control often feel a need to speak instantly, but those with true confidence know that not every situation demands a reaction. Sometimes, a steady look, a calm demeanor, or just your silence in a heated moment speaks volumes. It shows maturity. It shows power. Think back. The last time you were angry, did you react right away? If you did you regret it afterward? And if you stayed silent, did it save you from a bigger mistake? Self-control isn't easy, but it is something you can learn. Next time you feel that wave of anger, pause, breathe, count to 10 if you need to. Write your thoughts down instead of blurting them out. Then wait and watch. You might be surprised at how silence not only gives you control but actually helps you come out ahead. Have you ever chosen silence instead of jumping into an argument? Did it shift the outcome in your favor? Let us know in the comments below. Number 3. Silence helps you listen and learn more. Silence enhances your ability to listen and to learn. Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, follows one core principle: listen before you speak. At Bridgewater, he established a culture built on radical transparency, a place where every opinion, no matter how uncomfortable, is welcomed and carefully examined. There's no room for pretense or hollow praise, just unfiltered truth. Dalio believes that facing uncomfortable truths is the only path to real growth. That's why he never rushes to interrupt or fill the silence with his own voice. Instead, he listens deeply, even when he's on the receiving end of criticism. Can you imagine that? One of the wealthiest individuals in the world, the head of one of the most influential investment firms, spending most of his time not talking, but listening, not because he lacks things to say, but because he understands one vital truth. Those who dominate conversations often miss opportunities to learn, while those who stay quiet gain the upper hand. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." This quote hits at a powerful idea. The ego that drives us to speak constantly kills the humility required to absorb new knowledge. When you're always talking, you're closing the door to understanding. You become so busy expressing your perspective that you forget just how vast the world is beyond what you know. Ironically, most people want to assert their opinions, but rarely stop to ask themselves, is what I'm saying really accurate? Could I be missing something important just because I'm trying to prove a point? Picture this: a conference room, bright yet focused, faces tense with thought. One person dominates the air, going on and on, trying to push their viewpoint across. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the table, another person sits quietly. They watch, listen closely, catch every word, reading the room, analyzing each comment. And when everyone else finishes talking, This quiet observer asks one question, just one, but it shifts the entire direction of the conversation. That is, the subtle force of deliberate silence. Stoics recognize that listening isn't a passive act, it's a strategy. When you stay quiet, you don't just hear what's said, you also catch what's left unsaid. You notice the tone, read hesitation, and the eyes feel the intent behind each phrase. Look at history's greatest leaders. They're not the ones who dominate every discussion. They're the ones who absorb everything, who listen first, observe, and only speak when it truly matters. Warren Buffett follows a simple yet highly effective rule. Spend 80% of your time listening and thinking and only 20% speaking. Why? Because those who speak endlessly are often driven by ego, a desire to be acknowledged, to be right, to be admired. But truly successful people don't operate from that space. They don't need to prove anything. They don't need to talk constantly to validate their worth. They understand that real power comes from deep comprehension, not from the number of words you say, and this truth applies just as strongly in our personal lives. Think of the last argument you had. Did talking more actually help, or did it make things worse? When emotions take control of your voice, you lose control of the situation. But when you stay quiet, observe, and allow yourself a moment before responding, the entire dynamic can shift. When was the last time you truly listened to someone? Not just waiting to reply, but really listening to understand. When you're silent and focused on the other person, they feel respected. They become more open, more willing to share, and the relationship deepens naturally. So what's the takeaway? Listen, even when the truth is hard to hear. When someone criticizes you, don't rush to defend yourself. Pause. Evaluate. Is there truth in what they said? If yes, thank them for revealing something you needed to hear. If not, let it go. Truth doesn't need to be defended to remain valid. Listen, even when you think you already know, because chances are there's always a new angle you haven't considered. Listen, because it's the quickest path to growth. Silence isn't weakness. On the contrary, it's one of the strongest tools you can wield. Those who can hold back their words are the ones who truly lead their lives with intention. And the best part? When you speak less, every single word you choose to say becomes 10 times more powerful. Number 4. Being quiet makes you more mysterious and trustworthy. Silence is its own language, one that speaks volumes about self-respect and inner strength. In a world that's constantly rushing to fill every gap with noise, those who choose to remain silent often become the ones who hold the most power. They don't need to constantly prove their worth through endless conversation. Their actions speak louder, and because they speak less, they often stand out more. That's why people who are quiet but think deeply tend to capture attention. They carry an air of mystery, a kind of unpredictability that draws others in. And it's that very ambiguity that becomes their strength. Picture this. You walk into a crowded room filled with chatter and laughter. Amid the noise, there's one person sitting quietly, calm, observant, confident. They don't speak for attention, don't perform for the crowd, but when they finally do say something, everyone listens. Each word they say carries weight. They don't have to raise their voice, because their silence has already commanded respect. This is the power of being mysterious. When you speak less, people become curious. They wonder what you're thinking, They start to lean in, trying to understand you. By holding back, you become more intriguing. Napoleon Bonaparte understood this perfectly. A military mastermind, he was also a master of information control. Before his 1796 Italian campaign, he deliberately kept his plans secret, even from his closest allies. He moved troops unpredictably, changed his tactics frequently, and left his enemies confused and on the defensive. Even in political negotiations, Napoleon rarely revealed his full hand. He listened first, letting others speak and expose their intentions. At the Treaty of Tilsit, he let Tsar Alexander I make assumptions, leading to concessions that ultimately benefited France. Napoleon's restraint, his controlled silence, won him more than just battles. It earned him victories in diplomacy and reputation. You see, the person who speaks less usually holds the strongest position, because composure is authority. When you stay out of pointless debates, when you're not desperate to explain yourself, people begin to see you differently. They sense a kind of inner discipline that can't be shaken easily. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When your mind is calm and centered, your presence reflects that, and silence becomes the clearest evidence of a well-trained mind. Even in religious texts, silence is revered. Jesus, in moments of accusation and ridicule, didn't fight back with words. He stayed silent. And that silence echoed with more strength than any defense ever could. True silence is not weakness. It's the deepest form of confidence, an unshakable trust in the truth and in yourself. Many people assume that talking more shows intelligence, but often it's the quiet ones who command the most attention. Because when you don't say much, people start to listen more carefully. Think about it. The most powerful and successful individuals rarely reveal everything about themselves. They understand that mystery breeds value. When you keep a part of yourself hidden, you make others respect that boundary. They know they can't manipulate you easily. And that's exactly why they trust you more. So how can you use this in everyday life? Start by resisting the urge to share all your plans. Hold back some of your thoughts. Make your words count by speaking only when necessary. You'll notice something interesting. Respect starts to come naturally. Not because you demanded it, but because you earned it by knowing when to stay silent. And there's one more layer to this. Silence doesn't just make you mysterious. It gives you control over information, over perception, over your narrative. When you speak less, you don't expose your weaknesses. When you stay quiet, you dictate how others see you. That's what great negotiators and strategists do. They don't rush to share. They let others go first, revealing their cards, their emotions, their weaknesses. So how exactly does silence become a tool for strategy, control, and influence? Let's dive into that in the next part. Number 5. Silence helps you control the story and information. Whoever controls the information controls the situation. Victory rarely belongs to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the one who controls the pace, the rhythm, and what gets revealed. The most powerful tool isn't speech, it's strategic silence. The Stoics understood this deeply. They turned brevity into a weapon, a sharp, deliberate tactic to keep control and clarity in any situation. Think of a negotiation, an argument, or a moment when someone tries to manipulate you. Who usually has the upper hand? It's not the one who speaks the most. It's the one who stays calm, quiet, and unreadable. When you remain silent, you force the other person to act on guesswork. They're left trying to interpret your stillness, and in doing so, they often overthink, make mistakes, or reveal more than they should. Silence creates space, and in that space, others begin to lose balance. They question themselves. They start filling the gap with unnecessary words that can be used against them. Talkative people expose themselves. They leak emotion, intention, and sometimes weakness. But the one who listens, who speaks only when necessary, has the advantage of observation. They gather insights, watch reactions, and respond not with emotion, but with strategy. One of the clearest examples of silence as a weapon? Hostage negotiations. Picture the scene. A hostage taker is shouting demands, waving a weapon, trying to force a reaction from the police. But instead of arguing or pleading, the negotiators say nothing. They just wait. That silence doesn't mean surrender. It's psychological warfare. Seconds of quiet turn into discomfort. The kidnapper begins to feel unsure. Why aren't they responding? What are they planning? And in that uncertainty, his mind becomes his own enemy. As doubt grows, control slips from his hands. Eventually, the silence breaks him, not the other way around. He lowers his demands, he makes mistakes. The situation de-escalates without violence. That's not luck. That's strategy. That's the power of silence. You've likely seen this play out in your own life. Someone tries to provoke you, bait you into reacting. Maybe they want you to defend yourself or lose your cool, but the moment you refuse to respond, the moment you let silence stand in place of emotion, you win. Because silence doesn't just protect your emotions, it protects your power. It makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability is control. In the workplace, in leadership, this truth is everywhere. The most respected leaders aren't the ones who speak constantly. They're the ones who speak rarely, but when they do, every word matters. You've probably been in a meeting like that. One person talks endlessly, chasing approval. Another stays silent until the right moment, and when they speak, the room goes quiet. That's influence earned through restraint. When you speak less, your words carry more value. People don't hear noise, they hear meaning. The Stoics warned against empty talk. They believed in action over explanation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to respond to every insult. Let your silence become your strength. Let your actions speak the truth. Silence isn't about avoidance. It's about precision. It's choosing when to speak and knowing when not to. In a world of noise and instant reaction, silence becomes a form of self-mastery. It's how you stay grounded. It's how you protect your peace. And it's how you let others reveal themselves before you make your move. So next time someone tries to pull you into a pointless argument, pause. Say nothing. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. Then, when you do speak, make sure it's worth hearing. Have you ever experienced the power of silence in your own life? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's reflect together. Number 6. Practice silence to practice discipline and patience. Silence isn't just an absence of noise. It's a deliberate act of self-control. And those who master it, master themselves. Have you ever sat in a conversation where everyone is talking over one another, each person trying to dominate the space with their voice, their opinion, their ego, and you choose not to speak? At first it feels unnatural. You might wonder, should I say something? Will they think I'm weak, uninterested, or disconnected? But stay with the silence, because very quickly you begin to notice something deeper. Silence gives you a power that words can never give. A person who can stay silent, especially when provoked, is a person who has gained control over their impulses. In life, it's easy to react, to lash out, to defend yourself, to speak just to fill the space or protect your ego. But reacting is easy. Resisting the reaction, that's discipline. And discipline is power. We live in a world we cannot control. People will misunderstand you. They will offend you. They will test your patience. But you will never be able to control what others say. You can, however, control yourself. And silence is how you begin. The Stoics knew this well. They believed silence was not weakness, it was strength, refined. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, often reflected in silence. He trained his mind not to be ruled by emotion, not to be dragged by anger, fear, or arrogance. Because once you lose control of your words, you've already lost control of your mind. What does silence give you? It gives you space. Space between stimulus and response. Space to breathe, to reflect, to choose a wiser path. When you practice silence, you begin to see things as they are. Not through the lens of emotion, but with clarity. You become an observer first. And the best decisions are always made by the one who sees clearly, not the one who speaks first. This lesson isn't only found in Stoic philosophy, it runs deep in spiritual traditions as well. In Christianity, silence is not just a pause, it is a sacred act. When Jesus stood before his accusers, he didn't argue, defend, or lash out. He remained silent. And in that silence, there was not fear, but profound strength. The strength to endure, the strength to accept, the strength to rise above. Want to begin building that strength for yourself? Start simple. Take just 10 minutes a day to sit in complete silence. No phone, no music, no distractions, just sit. Observe your breath, your thoughts, your impulses. This moment of stillness will sharpen your awareness more than hours of conversation ever could. In your daily life, flip the ratio. Listen 80%, speak 20%. And when you do speak, let it be intentional. Don't talk just to react. Talk to bring value. Talk because your words have weight, not just noise. And in those moments where anger burns, where someone pushes you to react, pause. Ask yourself, do I really need to speak right now? Will these words make anything better? If not, let silence speak for you. There's a myth that silence is fear, but in truth, silence is confidence. The loudest person in the room is often the most unsure. But the one who says less, who listens, observes, and speaks only when it matters, commands far more respect. When you practice silence, you are practicing something sacred, self-respect. You stop chasing approval. You stop being reactive. You learn to carry yourself with quiet strength. In a world addicted to noise, be the one who knows how to sit in stillness. Because it is in that stillness that you will find your strength, your peace, and your patience to rise above every challenge that comes your way. Number 7. The art of using words at the right time. Silence is not avoidance. It is not fear. It is not weakness wrapped in stillness. For a Stoic, silence is strategy. But strategy doesn't mean staying silent forever. Because even silence, when overused, loses its power. Silence is only golden when it's followed by words of value. A sword left in its sheath is safe, but a sword drawn at the right moment, precisely, decisively, changes the outcome of the battle. Words are no different. Cato, one of the great Stoic figures, understood this deeply. He never wasted words. He didn't raise his voice to command attention, nor did he join in noisy debates just to prove a point. He spoke rarely, but when he did, people listened. Because his silence wasn't passive, it was measured. His words had weight. In a world obsessed with volume, the one who speaks with timing, not frequency, commands true respect. Picture this: a tense boardroom. Ideas flying, people talking over each other, each voice trying to be the loudest in the room. And there, at the edge of the table, sits someone silent, listening, watching, waiting. Then, when the room quiets, he speaks. Not loudly, not emotionally, just clearly. And suddenly every eye is on him. Because he didn't speak to fill space. He spoke to cut through the noise. This is the Stoic way. Not to remain silent at all costs, but to speak only when it matters. When your words are chosen, calm and purposeful, you don't just speak, you move people. The Stoics taught that a single careless word can undo what years of effort built. A word spoken in anger can destroy a friendship. A promise made too quickly can lose all meaning. As Zeno of Citium once said, "Better to trip with the feet than with the tongue," because a physical stumble can be corrected. But a spoken word, you can never take it back. So before you speak, ask yourself, is this necessary? Will it help? Is it worth saying? Most people believe silence is weakness. But that belief often comes from those who are afraid not to speak, afraid to lose control of the conversation. What they don't realize is that the one who remains calm and quiet holds the emotional high ground. When someone provokes you, they want a reaction. They want to pull you into their chaos. But when you don't give it to them, you rob them of their power. Your silence is your shield. However, silence is not always the answer. There are moments in life where silence is a betrayal of truth, when injustice rises, when the weak are attacked, when lies are repeated, you must speak. But even then, speak with clarity, not with rage. The Stoic doesn't let anger hold the pen. They let reason guide the words. Look at true leaders. They're not the loudest, but when they speak, everyone listens. Because they know the secret. The fewer the words, the more they matter. Life constantly asks us, should I speak now or stay silent? It's not always obvious. But the more you practice silence, the more you'll recognize those rare moments when a single sentence, delivered calmly, precisely, can shift the entire situation. When you master this art, you don't just control your voice, you control your mind, your emotions, your presence. Silence is not surrender, it's self-respect. And when you do speak, you speak with the full weight of someone who chose their words, not someone who was ruled by them. The Stoics understood. True power lies not in how much you say, but in how well you say it. And when. Let your silence sharpen your wisdom. Let your words carry purpose, and let your calm presence speak louder than noise ever could.